Welcome to the English with Kirsty podcast from www.englishwithkirsty.com. Here I'll be sharing with you tips, information and other learning resources so that you can improve your business English. Everyone, and welcome back to the English with Kirsty podcast. Today I have a returning guest. So if you want to find out our first conversation and what we talked about, you can find out about Megan in episode 240. But today she's back, so welcome. Nice to see you again.
Thank you for having me.
And today I thought we're going to do what we're going to do a bit more of this year, in that I'll have some episodes where I'll be interviewing people, but other episodes where I'll be having conversations about things that are interesting and important and hopefully useful for you as well. So we're here to have a conversation. And although this is going out in January, it's not your typical New Year episode because I don't like a lot of the content that's created around New Year. And so I don't want to feed that beast. I want to create something that will actually be helpful. And as we were talking just before we started to record, we were talking about invitations and how invitations are actually something that's exciting, something that's interesting, unless you don't want to go to the birthday party or whatever it is. But an invitation can be something nice, and that's what I want to see this as, an invitation to think about habits and how we can have better habits, how we create new habits, and how we can make sure that the things that we want to do are sustainable and that we do keep doing them because they become part of our lives, not just I must do this thing. So what would you say is one of your best habits, Megan?
Oh, starting off with such a zinger, and
I
I
know.
love the
Evil.
idea of
Sorry.
habits, and I kind of think of habits and routines and rituals as kind of the same type of sauce. So anyone can make chicken, right? But when you have that sauce on it, it just makes it even more special. So one of my favorite kind of rituals that I have is my morning me time. And I usually wake up, and depending on the day, I'll go to the gym, get a good workout in, or sometimes I'll just sit and do yoga or journal. And that me time in the morning just kind of sets the tone for the rest of the day. So that is probably one of my most favorite habits, because it's one of my most favorite times of just very gentle kind of waking up and starting the day, starting the week, starting whatever I am starting at that point in time.
And like you said, gentle, because there's so much around people talking about how they want to make change and habits that is kind of you must do this, and it's all about obligation and force, but being gentle with yourself is important. And so when did you start making this a thing, your morning routine? Has that always been like that, or is it more recent?
It has been, I was doing it when I was working in corporate, and then also just when I started working for myself, I started doing more of it. So it's existed off and on, I would say, for about 10 years. And of course, it goes through seasons, right? Where there are some mornings where it's a 7:30 a.m. meeting, and I don't get that me time. So I find time elsewhere in the day, later in the day for that time. But off and on, it's been just kind of that invitation, as we talk about invitations. So that invitation to make the day whatever I want to make it, to really dig in that solitude, to say, this is how I slept, this is how I'm feeling, and this is what I need. And it's not prescriptive in that way. I'm not filling out a spreadsheet every morning thinking about that, but it's just one of those, it's a sense for me to be able to focus on myself before I go and serve others throughout the day. And it really started to come about when I came from a place of love versus a place of scarcity or fear. And I find that when people become overly prescriptive with their habits, um, I have to do the dishes before I go to bed. I have to clean the house. It's Saturday and I'm, a pig if I don't. If you use that hateful language, in my mind, I don't want to do it because I'm like, oh, I am a pig. Let me just eat ice cream and feel bad. But if I come from a place of love, of like, how good does it feel to have a clean house? I deserve a clean house. I deserve this time in the morning to sit and either journal or stretch or work out. Like, I feel better when I do it. So, totally changing the language around it just kind of helped me establish and come back to it. When I'm not sleeping well and I want to oversleep and then just get up and start work, I always come back to that. Oh, this doesn't feel good. Why doesn't it feel good? Because I deserve to have time in the morning before starting the day. And so I always kind of come back to it.
Yeah, words have power, don't they? And that includes how we talk to ourselves. Like if you are, oh, you should do this. Why didn't you do this? Oh, you're not very good. All these things are really negative. And I think sometimes it's something I've tried more with some of the new things that I wanted to start doing, and also in some of the more established practices or um, habits I have around language learning, for example, is about being curious, because a lot of the time is, for me, I'm learning because I want to know more, I want to understand more, I want to have different conversations with different people, I want to yeah, I want to be able to speak my languages better, for example. But it's if you come from a place of being curious, oh, what can I find out today? What is there that's new that I didn't know before, rather than, oh, you have to do 30 minutes of learning this particular thing, or you must, if you don't listen to a podcast, you'll never learn anything and you'll never advance, like all these kind of really negative ways that we can talk to ourselves are not helpful, because that part of you makes you give up already, like, oh well, if that's how it is, I don't need to try, then I've already failed. But if you can be more kind of curious and think, yeah, maybe I can meet some interesting new people, or maybe I can learn something new. um and I think being curious also means finding out what works for you, because talking about mornings, some people really, really hate mornings and a morning routine wouldn't work for them because they're not awake, or their life doesn't lend itself to having that time alone first thing, but they might have it in the evening, or they might be able to go for a walk sometime in the day and just get that alone time with the nature. So trying different things and then figuring out what does make you feel good, what does make you happy. I think we should be more willing to find our own way with that and see what feels good, and yeah, take advice or find out what other people are doing, but ultimately they're not living your life, so that their ways won't necessarily work for you. So it's about taking all the information that's available, thinking, okay, what is going to make me feel good and what is going to help me.
Absolutely. And we all have our different ways of looking at the world and where our energy is, and what works for me isn't going to work for you. What works for you isn't going to work for, someone else. And I think that's the biggest thing, is having that curiosity, because the curiosity invites grace. And when we have grace with something, especially when we're creating or establishing a new habit or a new routine, that grace is totally needed, because it's easy to default into that kind of hateful or aggressive language of, oh, you didn't go to the gym, you piece of poo, like, why didn't you? And it's very much of a, hey, I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and tomorrow will be better. And it's fine. Like, when we hold ourselves to this high standard, I think it's just inviting disappointment and a lot of just emotional carnage. When we're graceful with ourselves, it has that understanding. You can still strive and understand what went wrong, or what isn't ideal or what isn't helpful, and it's not going to ruin your day. I think when our habits start ruining our days, we need to look inward and figure out how we can adjust. And it is that adjustment period where some days are going to feel great and other days are going to feel trash. And that's okay because it's that period of adjusting whatever we're trying to do. If it's, you know, working out or eating differently or learning a language or whatever kind of self-development regime we're doing, it's important to just have that until we get bored with it. And then when we get bored with it, okay, how can I change it? What would happen? How would that feel? So it's still inviting that curiosity.
Yeah, and I think sometimes when we get bored with something, it's actually telling us something. Either it's not working for us because the thing that we're doing is too easy, or because it's become too much of a habit, too much of a routine. And I think sometimes we can, as our priorities change, like I'm somebody who works from home, so I want to make time for walking and for fitness in my day, because otherwise, when I worked in an office and I had to walk for half an hour and then another 10 minutes, that was like an hour and a quarter each day of walking. And I don't have that now. I haven't had it for the last 12 years or so, but I had to find time in my day to do things for myself, for fitness, for exercise. And I think the same with another language. When I decided to take on a new language to be something that I'm committed to and I want to learn, that's fine, but there has to be space for new habits. Like if you decide, oh, I want to do a new thing, you have to make space for it. And sometimes that means saying no to other things as your priorities change. Seeing where you want to put your time and energy, because some people, it's not so much that they have trouble creating new habits, it's that we don't try to get rid of other ones when new ones come in, and so we end up overloaded, and that makes everything no fun because you're doing too much. So I think being open to change is also really important. Like if there are some established habits that are important to you, you may be doing them for the rest of your life because they're part of who you are. But if you want to give time and energy to new projects or a new language or a new hobby, then not just seeing where can I fit that into my existing life, but does anything in my existing life need to go to make room for this new thing that I want to give my love and energy to, so that everything has a chance.
Yeah, I absolutely love that because usually when we say no, that that creates a space, and sometimes that space can exist for a time, whether that's a week, 3 weeks, 6 months, 3 years. When that space is there, new things can come in and we can kind of play with it. I think as adults, we forget what how much fun play is. And so sometimes if that space is, oh, I used to commute an hour and now I don't, let me sit and do a puzzle. Like, yes, let's do that. And that play can be something that doesn't make us money or it doesn't
Mm.
like we do just for the pure fun of it, for the pure enjoyment of it. And that can't be discounted either. So it can be overwhelming to think, oh, I want to do these 5, 7, 20 things this year. And you can, and maybe you should, or maybe you want to. And sometimes it's learning the seasonality, kind of leaning into that seasonality of it, of what do I want in this point in time in my life? It's not planning out the next year, 5 years, 20 years. It's what do I need right now and what am I looking forward to? Because when we have that thing to look forward to as well, that just makes life even more enjoyable.
Yeah, and sometimes the things that are most fun are things that are quite spontaneous. We didn't expect them. But if you don't have any space, then there's not much space for new things, spontaneous things, fun things to come in, because every minute of your life is blocked out. And I do understand that some people have very busy schedules. I don't mean that. I just mean like making, feeling okay with that, because often people, oh, what did you do at the weekend? Or you had some time off. Where did you go? People don't always need to go somewhere, or, have a really busy time. If they have some time off for work, sometimes they just need to rest. And
Yeah,
that's okay. We need to be okay with either resting when we need it, but also doing things that are fun. And it's interesting how many times that's come up when I've been speaking with people on this podcast about learning languages or learning new things, even just if it's not fun, okay, maybe some complicated grammar structures are not fun, but you can find ways to make them fun. But I mean, if there's no fun in the process, then we will lose interest.
Oh, absolutely. And I know for me, I can get very rigid with schedules and just very rigid with like, oh no, it's Sunday, we can't go out because, this is the day to do laundry or something. And that rigidity is good in a sense because it makes it so that I have my established habits and the week is set up well. I want to continue to do that. And that spontaneity of, yeah, let's go out for dinner. Like thinking about what you might be missing just kind of helps bring that spontaneity out as well. Like, yes, let's try this. What do we have to lose? A little bit of time? Okay. If it's worth it, if it's worth that experience, then I think it's worth doing. It's worth trying at least and experimenting with it.
Yeah, making time for people as well, because sometimes you think, oh, it'd be good to catch up with this person, and you haven't, but oh, I'm so busy. And yeah, sure, we're all often busy, but I think being curious and making time for people can remind you how much you enjoy spending time with them as well. So,
Yeah,
but I guess it's about creating space again to do that. If you
it's your priorities too.
mm,
Like if I prioritize quality relationships, then if somebody texts and is like, "Hey, let's meet for coffee," or "Hey, let's tell me when you're ready for a Zoom," like, yes, absolutely. But if in that moment in time I'm prioritizing my task list, then that makes that decision a little bit harder to make. So I think it's always going back to your priorities and your needs and making sure that you have that shared value system with other people.
and boundaries, I guess, because if your life is always like taken up by what other people want from you, what other people expect from you, I know some of us do have people who are dependent on us. I don't really like that, but I mean, if you don't set boundaries with all the people around you, then it's harder to give time and energy to your priorities because something could always come up, and if you always allow that to derail your day or to take up more of your day than maybe it should, then it's very difficult to find time for those things that are really important to you.
Yes, sometimes the exhaustion is doing too much. Sometimes the exhaustion is simply doing too much of what doesn't give you any sort of joy or excitement or satisfaction with it. And when I think about boundaries, I struggled with boundaries for the longest time because I always thought of them as very black and white and rigid. And I was like, oh, this person just sucks all my energy. I don't want to call them. Yet it could be a boundary that we aren't going to call, or it could just simply be a boundary of I'm going to call them for 10 minutes every week. And at the end of the 10 minutes, here are some phrases that I can use to leave.
Mm.
And that boundary can be as soft or as hard as we want it to be because it's difficult. Yes, people are social animals. We need people. And it can be difficult when we don't feel that energy, we don't feel that excitement to to say no or to say not right now or to say okay, only for this amount of time. And when we have that shared expectation, the shared values, that to me is like the special stuff is like, yes, let me spend 2 hours with this person because I absolutely adore them. And I get so much energy and they get so
Mm.
much energy versus having more boundaries around a person or a thing or an activity. It's, I don't really enjoy this and I'm going to continue it for this amount of time. Here's this time limit, or here's this, this topic is off limits, I'm not doing that. Establishing those boundaries is helpful because it keeps the relationship alive without necessarily, I guess, keeping it alive in a very realistic way.
Yeah, and I just think it's interesting how we've been talking a lot about how we use our time and the things that we want to give our time to. And a lot of the advice around this is like, do more, like set a time limit and make sure you do X amount of minutes on this task. And what we're actually saying is maybe do less, but do more of the things that help you to meet your goals or that really add value to you. So it's not always about squeezing one more meeting into our schedule or like getting up early so you can do one more thing, because I really hate getting up early. It's the worst. I'm not at my best. So anything that involves like get up at 5 o'clock to do whatever is not going to work for me, because it's just no, I'm an owl. I'm a night owl. Um, but I think it's about, okay, we all have the same amount of time. Some of us have things that we have to do that are non-negotiable, but with the time that is left, it's about, I guess, quality over quantity. And what do you really want? Because sometimes I think we don't think about what we really want. We just think about what's on our to-do list, like I have to do this and this and this. And you can become you end up doing whatever's on the to-do list, but it's not necessarily your priorities. And I think one thing is about, yeah, okay, what do I want? And which of these things do I have to do? And then which of these things will bring me closer to what I really want long term? And that doesn't have to be like a 10-year plan. It could just be for the next couple of months. But it's about being selective, I guess, and then doing more of that thing because you have more time available, because you maybe said no to some things. And hopefully it will bring you more joy as well, because it is actually something that you're committed to.
Yeah, absolutely. When I learned about seasons and kind of goal setting and living life, that, that to me it was a huge light bulb moment because I think of it as what is the season that I'm in right now? And also, how does the current season that Mother Nature is providing, how does that impact me? We're in January. I am low energy. Yes, I'm getting up early, but early sometimes is 6, sometimes it's 6:30, sometimes it's 7:30, sometimes it's 10, depending on the day. And that early definition will change, but it's very much of a where's my energy? What's the priority? And what's the season? And to me, sometimes the seasons are filled with social time, sometimes they're heads down, business work, sometimes they're family filled. And that season can change at a moment's notice sometimes, where news comes in, oh, we need to pivot. And thinking about it as that kind of temporality, just to me, it helps live that more aligned life of this is temporary, this is the current season, it's not going to last forever. So let's enjoy it, take advantage of it, and then be ready to move on.
Yeah, looking at how nature does it, like nature isn't like, oh, go, go, go all of the year. There's the winter and there's the autumn and there's the spring. And I'm not saying you need to live totally in line with the seasons, although by the time we got to like the middle of winter this year, I was done with that. I'm not going to do any more like, oh, you must buy a bunch of stuff before the end of the year. I was like, no, this is the time to be a bit more quiet. And I really felt that. But I think it can be in, shorter cycles as well. Like when do you have your most social energy and when do you not? And it's okay to be more socially active when you have that energy and then to withdraw a bit when you need time. I think it's easy to fall into that trap of believing that you have to be like on all the time and productive at the same level all of the time. And yeah, sure, we need to do our jobs, but there are also times some of the best ideas come when we do have a bit more time to be more introspective, like for those of us with our own business. If you're super, super busy all the time and you don't give yourself any time for planning or for being creative or for thinking about your direction, like what you want to do, I know it's hard when you are busy, but if you don't take that time, it's very difficult to sustain it, that level of momentum, because you could burn yourself out that way.
Yeah. And it's really about giving ourselves permission to rest and or permission to say, no thanks on the social. Let's move it to another weekend. I need to
Mm.
work. Where it's realizing what we need and giving ourselves permission to do that thing, whatever that thing is that we need. And not to say that we're all going to be, you know, monks in a cabin, like life goes on, family goes on. We need, it's part of our roles to take care of those relationships as well. I think it's our responsibility to maintain relationships. And we can maintain relationships and focus on that current priority at the same time. And it just is a lot of gray area. I think we're taught like black, white. You're resting, you're sleeping, you're napping, or you're working really, really hard. And a lot of times our lives are in that gray area where we might, work really hard for 3 hours and then go take an hour walk. And having that freedom and that permission and that expectation of, hey, this was really big brain time. Let's rest that brain for 10 minutes even.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be this big commitment to change or this big commitment to do something, this big monumental task. Like magic can happen in 5 minutes a day.
Yeah, especially if you keep coming back to that thing.
Yeah, as you were talking about earlier, coming back with that curiosity of and that fun of I want to do this. I get to do this, not I have to do this or I'm, poo if I don't.
That always makes you think of a dog going for a walk, like how dogs are so like, oh, look, there's a tree. I'm gonna go and snip, snip. It's like when dogs go for a walk, it's not like, oh, I have to go for a walk because it's my, unless it's raining, because some dogs really don't like going for a walk in the rain. But the curiosity and the sense of interest that dogs go for their walks with, I think there's something we can learn from that. It's like it's okay to have time to run around and chase a ball, or it's okay to be interested because I've done this walk like every day this week, but there might be something that's interesting today. Like what's this? I think dogs can teach us a lot in many ways, but the idea that every day is a new day and that it could be something really interesting, even if you've done that walk 100 times before, I think is something we can learn from.
Yes, as mine was barking at 3 in the morning, I had to remind myself that dogs have no concept of time. And me being angry with him and frustrated at 7 this morning, thinking, you had 4 hours, like just 4 hours more. And I'm like, you know what? He's already forgotten about that
Hmm.
because dogs are completely and utterly present. And no matter what, if it is a bee that he is chasing around or a tree that he wants to sniff, like he is all into that and totally present. He's not thinking about why he was barking at 3 this morning. He's, thinking about what the current state of the blanket is
And where are
since
the
he's
treats?
currently down for his nap.
Where is the banana?
Yes.
But yeah, I think that's a good place to come back to you about being present and being intentional as well with our time and resources. So we're not saying, you for those who are working with languages that you have to do X amount of minutes or X amount of exercises. It's about being mindful of how you use your time so you can get the best out of it. And sometimes that means saying no. Sometimes that means trying something different. Sometimes it means that you keep going with what you've been doing, maybe try it in a different way to make it a bit more exciting. Sometimes that means getting other people involved so that you have their input too, or so that you have that sense of community or somebody doing something along with you. Sometimes it means asking for help. Sometimes it means having a rest, but doing what you're doing with intention rather than just being carried along on a wave of things that you think you should be doing.
Yes. Excellent summary, Kirsty.
Ah,
It's
we got there.
it can be almost overwhelming with the amount of options. Like the
Mm.
world really is a large place. It's really tuning into your present needs and your present wants too. What's fun? What is enjoyable? What might need some more practice? And then you can find the solution. But first, we need to really hone in on whatever that question is.
Yeah, and that's, I think, a good place to leave it so that everyone who's listening, think about that for you, because everyone is different. We all have different answers to this question, but if you know the answer, then you'll be in a better position to make good choices and aligned choices with where you want to go. So thank you, Megan, for coming back on the podcast. It's been great talking with you, and I'm sure we will do it again sometime in the future.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
And for everyone else, have a good week and have fun learning English.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the English with Kirsty podcast. If you have any questions or comments, my email address is kirsty@englishwithkirsty.com, or you can go to www.englishwithkirsty.com/podcast, where you'll find information about the individual episodes.